Amma ba'd. We begin by praising Allah, and we send blessings and salutations upon His beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and his family and his companions, and all of those who follow him up until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And as we gather on this blessed day of Jumu'ah, many a times we'll find an entire month has almost gone by since Ramadan came to an end. And many of us at times we start feeling a dip in our Imaan. And then we start facing difficulties in our lives. And then at times we start feeling overwhelmed. Allah, He says, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا, that He created man to be weak. Mankind is weak. The moment some difficulty touches man, we start complaining. There's not much that we can actually bear when we start breaking down. And so when that happens, when we start feeling overwhelmed in our lives, the best thing to do is to go back to the basics. And that is, we are all Muslims. We all believe in Tawheed, in the oneness of Allah. And everything goes back to the oneness of Allah. When we remind ourselves that Allah is in complete control at all times. Not a single thing happens in the creation of Allah except that Allah gives His permission for it to happen first. Nothing of benefit comes to you. Allah, He says, وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِخَيْرٍ فَلَا رَادَّ لِفَضْلِهِ. When Allah wants some good to come to you, then nothing can stop it from reaching you. Nothing at all can stop it from reaching you. And vice versa, Allah, He says before that, وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُ. That if Allah chooses to send difficulty to you, then nobody can alleviate that difficulty from you except for Him, except for Allah Himself. So yes, we are all Muslim. We are all over here to worship Allah, to fulfill our obligations. But what exactly is Islam? Many of the people, we have a misconception. We think Islam means peace. Actually, it doesn't. Islam comes from the word aslama wa yuslamu, which means to submit. Islam means to submit completely and entirely to Allah, to the commands of Allah, to the obedience of Allah, submitting to Allah's plan for you. That when you know in your heart that Allah is in control of your affairs. Nasiyati biyadik, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us in a dua, our forehead is in Allah's palms. He controls every aspect of our life. And so when we submit to that, we submit ourselves and humble ourselves completely to Allah. That is Islam. And the proof of Islam in our hearts results in our actions. And that comes down to the 5 pillars of Islam. The first being the Shahada. And we have our Salah and our Zakat and our Siyam and Hajj. These are the physical aspects alone. A person may do these outside actions, but it does not mean that he is a true believer in his heart. And that is where Iman comes in. And may Allah grant us all the perfection of Iman. As we know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us there are 6 articles of Iman. Amantu billah, to believe in Allah, wa malaikatihi, wa kutubihi, wa rusulihi, wal yawmil akhir, wal qadri khayrihi wa sharrihi min Allah. To believe in Allah and His angels and His books that He revealed and the messengers that He sent. And Yawmul Qiyamah. And also the qadr of Allah. All good and all evil is within the qadr, is within the power of Allah. And then the question usually we start asking is, okay, when evil things start happening to us, is that within the power of Allah? Now there's a difference over here. Something that, again, many of us, we fall into deviation because we do not understand this. That when it comes to the that of Allah, the essence of Allah, the being of Allah, He is Al-Quddus, the pure, As-Salam, free of all defects. No evil is from Allah. But within the decree of Allah, He allows certain evil things to take place to test you with it. Whilst you and I may not see any good that could come out from it, Allah is Al-Hakim. He is the most wise. And so nothing that Allah decrees except there's always good in it. The believer understands this. The believer takes hope in this. No matter what happens, the moment difficulty comes to the believer, he says, Alhamdulillahi ala kulli hal. All praises to Allah upon every single condition. Because even if something bad comes to me today, there is definitely good in it for me. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah grant us all again the perfection of Imaan. And likewise then, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, and such is the importance of doing righteous actions. You know, sometimes we as Muslims, we think, okay, I don't harm people. My salah is not up to scratch, but I don't harm people. I'm a good person. Surely that's okay. I'm still a good Muslim. Now that's a problem. Because righteous actions comes down to what Allah and His Messenger has made in the Sharia. Your actions and my actions has to align with the Sharia. That which conforms to the Quran and the Sunnah, that is a righteous action. And that too, it has to have ikhlas. These are the conditions for an action to be righteous. When we do that, our Iman is strengthened. If we commit sins instead, and many a time we do this. Yes, I'm a Muslim. Yes, okay, I offer salah at times, but we're still gossiping. We're still backbiting. We're still insulting people. We don't control our anger. These little habits in our hearts, these little diseases that's in our hearts, we don't usually care about it. Oh, I'm offering my salah, so it'll be okay. That's what we usually say. Well, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, and in a powerful hadith, that whenever a person commits a sin, a black dot is placed in their hearts. If they turn back to Allah, if they seek repentance and turn back to Allah, then Allah would remove that black dot from their heart. But if that person continues doing it, then the blackness starts spreading up until the entire heart becomes black. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited the ayah, Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim. But rather their hearts have become black, hard, rusty, bima kanu yaksibun, because of that which they have been earning of sins. And when the heart becomes hard, then we are no longer interested in worshipping Allah. We are no longer interested in approaching the Quran. We're no longer interested in fulfilling our obligations. So one thing leads to another. If you do a righteous action, it leads you to more righteous actions. And if you commit one sin and you don't turn back to Allah, it will lead you to further sins. Up until you find many other people, they practice. They are good Muslims. As they start growing up and they grow older, they are far away. Why? Because they underestimated shaitan. They underestimated how he's deceived many of the people before. May Allah grant us all protection. What's the lesson in it for us? Tawbatan nasuha. And becoming aware of Allah. And we'll finish on this note. Now Allah, He makes it easy for us. And this is one of the reasons why He mentions Jahannam and the events of Yawm al-Qiyamah and the terrifying nature of it, is to help us understand so that we may turn to Him. And don't get it wrong, Allah doesn't need our obedience. Allah doesn't need you, nor does He need me. Ya ayyuhan nas, antumul fuqara'u ila Allah, wallahu huwal ghaniyyul hamid. Allah is completely free. He does not need us to obey Him. He does not need our salah. He does not need me to do this khutbah. He does not need us waking up for fajr. He does not need anything. We need it to save ourselves. As a rahmah from Allah, He makes mention of all the punishments to happen. Of them, just two events on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And we will all see this. When Allah, He says, وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُعِّرَتْ. When the oceans, He will convert it into fire. Have you ever tried to visualize that? When you are resurrected, you see the vast oceans. It will be on fire on Yawm al-Qiyamah. وَجُمِعَ الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ. when Allah will crush the sun and the moon, put them together and throw them in Jahannam. Yes, the sun and the moon will be thrown into Jahannam. Some of the ulama mentioned because people worshipped the sun and the moon. Others say that they are inanimate objects, so they won't feel pain, but they are fuel. They are fuel for Jahannam. When the sun and the moon are thrown into Jahannam, the greater form of Jahannam shall rise. That which is boiling with fury and anger. What will be your situation on that day? Good news to the one who repented. Good news to the one who sought istighfar as much as he could. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "At-ta'ibu min al-dhanbi kaman la dhanba lah." The one who repents from his sins constantly, always turning back to Allah, he is like the one who never committed a sin in the first place. May Allah grant us all good understanding. May Allah grant us all sincere repentance. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-azim. Wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-hakim. أقول قولي هذا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.